Welcome to America's Wellness Experts. I'm your host, Gina Poole. On today's program, we're going to be discussing 3 big myths about ADD and ADHD that are keeping your health hostage. My guest expert joining us today is Dr. Corinne Weaver. Dr. Weaver wears many hats: upper cervical chiropractor, educator, author, mother, and TV personality. Her international #1 best-selling book, Learning How to Breathe, says you can trace almost every single ailment we face to improving proper breathing. Her passions are seeing her patients' health improve naturally without drugs or surgery. During her childhood, Dr. Weaver had issues with asthma and allergies that she thought she would always have to endure. After her first upper cervical adjustment at the age of 21, her health began to improve with upper cervical care and natural herbal remedies. This brought about a drug-free wellness lifestyle for her and her family, and she enthusiastically discovered her calling of helping others heal naturally. Since 2004, she has been the clinic director at Upper Cervical Wellness Center, which is a complete health and wellness center that promotes holistic healing and improves quality of life. Her new book, called Breathing for Your Brain, will be published and released May of 2017, and this book is designed to help others break through and free yourself from anxiety, depression, and ADD and ADHD. Dr. Corinne Weaver, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, let's dive right in. We're going to be talking about 3 big myths about ADD and ADHD. And myth #1, you told me, is diet. And what we eat, essentially, doesn't affect mood and behavior. So if that's a myth, Dr. Weaver, what's the truth about that one?
Well, you don't think about it. You just eat something and you kind of move on, right? But when you have a child or even yourself with food allergies, it changes everything. Cora, my sweet little girl, when she would eat pizza, she just became this hot mess, It's like she would eat pizza and she's like running around the house with ADHD and just knocking everything over. And I'm like, pizza, that wasn't even sugar. We obviously can look at sugar and know, okay, we know that we don't feed kids sugar because that's going to raise their mood up, right? But we never think about maybe pizza. So I did a food allergy test and found out she was allergic to gluten and dairy. And once we removed the allergies from her body, we removed the inflammation, it changed her mood. So, yeah, like I said, diet, it does. It does actually affect your mood. So very important to actually get an allergy test if you see your kids are just bouncing all over the place and you can't figure out why.
So mood and behavior can be greatly impacted by what we're feeding kids and what we're eating ourselves. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. And also there's a lot of chemicals. There's a lot of chemicals in food. We have MSG that they're putting in Chick-fil-A. And I know what's wrong with Chick-fil-A, right? So you go to Chick-fil-A and they're putting MSG, which actually does harm to the brain. So they feel good maybe for that second and actually makes you crave more Chick-fil-A, or Chinese food, which we found that MSG is in Chinese food, but it's also in potato chips. So in soups, and so these chemicals that are man-made that the reason they created it is so you buy their products more. But it messes up your mood and it can eventually lead to major headaches. So if your kids are having like headaches or if you're having headaches yourself, you have to look back, what did I eat today?
That's great information. So maybe for everyone listening, maybe a fair statement is if their child or themselves, just like you said, kind of are out of whack maybe a little bit, we kind of have to take a step back and figure out, hey, what did we eat and what are we maybe reacting to?
Yeah, because, some kids will have like peanuts. We know there's a peanut allergy, right? And so they'll have peanuts and they'll show up immediately, oh, my throat closes, or, you know, my skin, I have really bad eczema, and that's obvious. So that's obvious that they have a food allergy, but there's actually some food allergies that you are not aware of that happen in the gut that affects the brain.
That makes sense. That's great information, Dr. Weber. Let's move on to myth number 2 about ADD and ADHD. You have said that myth number 2 is, you know, once my stress levels are low again, my life's going to be normal and I won't have these problems anymore. So if that's a myth, what's the truth about stress levels?
You know, life is stress, right? It's not something we can really get away from. We actually have to train our body when we're in a stressful environment, train our body how to deal with that. If we're in a very, very stressful environment, we actually need more minerals and nutrients and good, healthy food to get us through that stressful environment. Another thing is what we do when we have stress, we get into the fight and flight response. That's a part of our nervous system that's basically ready to fight somebody, right? So we have to train to get back to what I call the rest and digest nervous system. And how we can do that is just simple exercises with your breathing. So I have people breathe through their nose, in and out, deep belly breathing, so they move their diaphragm. What that does is when you start moving that diaphragm and getting that good deep belly breathing, you can activate a part of your nervous system that helps you rest and digest your food, and it calms your stress levels down. But a lot of times it's hard to retrain the stressful environment because people get stuck. You know, they got their adrenals, which adrenals as little glands above your kidneys, and they produce what we call cortisol when we're under stress. But there's certain levels that the cortisol should be in throughout the day. We go high up in the morning, it kind of wakes us up, and then it kind of just tipples down throughout the night. But some people have straight up high cortisol, and it runs high all day long. And eventually what's going to happen is you're going to be crashed adrenal. The cortisol level goes straight down, and then you're tired, fatigued, and now you can't sleep. And it's hard when you're out of the stressful environment to turn it around. You actually need help to physically get that working properly again.
What about myth number 3? And myth number 3, you said, is I have ADD or ADHD, and you know what? My brain can't change. It's just my personality, and I have to live with it. If that's a myth, I'm excited to hear what the truth about this is.
Yeah, that's so funny, you know, because I'm going to tell you just my personal story with my daughter. She has ADHD and no longer has it anymore, but she had it. And so, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, it's just her personality. She's just wild and crazy all the time, you know, and I'm like, oh, great. I'm going to have to live with this for the rest of my life. But what we actually found is when we cleaned up her diet and we got stress, you know, which we talked about earlier, those things got better, but then her ADHD actually did not get fully better until we started using what we call neurofeedback. So we did a brain map on her head, and it doesn't hurt at all. You actually just wear like a shower cap. And we checked 19 different channels, EEG, basically different brain waves in her brain, and she just had to sit there. It didn't hurt at her all. And we were watching her brain, and I was able to detect different areas of her brain that basically would not shut off. They just kept going and going and going, especially the frontal part for her and what we call the temporal. So it was the front and the side that were not shutting off. They just kept, and I was like, oh, my goodness, no wonder she's high-strung. No wonder she's always can't sleep and she's acting crazy all the time and have tantrums and scream and throw things. You name it. If you've had a kid like that, you think, oh, my goodness, what happened to this child? And so we started retraining her brain, and within 6 weeks, just huge differences. I mean, I took a picture and put it on Facebook the other day where she was writing a love letter to Daddy. She wasn't doing that about 3 months ago. She was yelling at Daddy. And now she's writing love letters to Daddy. And, you know, she just gives me hugs and kisses. This is a kid that did not show hardly any love. And how she showed love was she was like punching you love, you know, that kind of love, right? Which is not what every parent wants. So when we started doing that neurofeedback and getting hugs And then it started changing her speech because she had speech issues. And then all of a sudden she's like, Mom, I can look at a book and I can see the letters and they all make sense, because she was diagnosed with also dyslexia. So here she is, like, trying to read and trying to be in school. Can you imagine how frustrating that can be as a 10-year-old and can't read? And so now she's able to open up a book, words make sense to her, and she's able to calm her nerves. She's able to go to sleep with no issues. It's like, wow, she changed personalities, right? No, we actually were able just to get and tap into the brain, see what the problem was, and actually heal that area of the brain and retrain it. And what I love about neurofeedback is it's permanent. Once you do it, it's set for life. And it's just amazing what we've been able to see in our office, like I mentioned with my daughter. But just another story I want to share with you is a kid that would come in, and she was a 14-year-old kid, but the mom has been dealing with her child being disruptive basically since first grade. Of course, they diagnosed with her ADHD, and they started giving her medication right away so she could focus in school because she couldn't focus. Well, one thing led to another as she was on this medication, and then she started having anxiety and started having depression, and eventually was starting to have suicide thoughts and tried to kill herself. And by this point, finally the mom found me, and I'm not sure how she found me. Probably someone else told her. That's usually how our office works. And so she came in, and just the mom's just desperate. And I'm like, you know what? I will do what I know what we can do is clean up her diet, get the stress levels down, and we're going to start doing neurofeedback. And she's like, you know what? I'm ready to do anything. I've been to 4 other doctors, and all they want to do is give her drugs. And she knows that drugs is not the answer. So we just started doing that, and just within a few, maybe I would say a few weeks, this kid has just made huge changes. Took 2 hours for this 14-year-old to get ready in the morning and was very upset and crying. And then now she can get up. She knows what she's going to wear. She's got a smile on her face, and she used to wear black all the time, and now she's wearing pink and bright colors when she comes sees me. And I'm like, oh, my gosh. So, talk about personality change, right? And your personality can change if your brain's functioning better. I mean, obviously we don't want to be crazy people in this world. We want to be likable. We want to have fun. We want to enjoy life. And that's what I want for these kids. And so if I can do that, if I can break through and free them from anxiety and depression and ADHD, then that's why I do what I do. And that makes me get up every morning because I love it.
Dr. Weaver, that's fantastic, and I love the success stories and what you're talking about as far as you're using neurofeedback. That's really something that makes you unique and different. Why don't you briefly tell everybody a little more about neurofeedback? It really is a very powerful modality that has a lot of research behind it. It's very exciting, but tell everyone more about it and how you use it and what makes you different than other, choices that maybe they have.
Well, I mean, the good thing is the kids love it. So, the parents are like, oh, my gosh, what are you going to do with my child, And I'm like, I've never had any problem. I've had a 2-year-old. I'm working with a 2-year-old right now. And I'm like, if I can get a 2-year-old to sit down and do what I need to do, that's awesome. And they love it. So basically, we start with doing the EEG brain map. And that's really the first start, because without that, we won't know what to do as a doctor. So we look at the brain, we see how the brain's functioning. We're looking at the alpha, delta, theta, and beta different waves. And if they show imbalance, so basically we're showing brain imbalance with the different waves, then that's the area that I'm going to focus on. So when they come in for their first visit, they get that done. I explain to mom and dad what I'm seeing in the brain. And if they're wanting to do this, we say, all right, let's go. We set them up. And basically what they do, they wear like earrings, just little earrings, but it actually doesn't have to go through the ear. It's like clip-ons. And then we put it in different areas of the brain. And what we're putting is gold leads. It doesn't hurt. It's just a little bit of paste on their brain, or not on their brain, right, on their skull or on their hair. And then they watch a movie. They can play a game as well, but we actually just kind of like for them to watch a movie, and they can pick any movie, except obviously we don't want them to watch a scary movie. We want them to watch actually a good movie. So sometimes we get to pick the movies, and the kids are like, yeah, I want to watch that, And so we put the movie in, and they watch it for 30 minutes. And what they're doing as they're watching the movie, there is lights that are coming from the movie in and out, and then they're listening to sound. That sound is going in and out. And the areas of the brain that we're working on is what we're retraining. Is if their brain's not paying attention to me, I have to flash the light in certain areas, and if it is, then I dim the light. So it goes back and forth as it's retraining the brain. And then what you're doing is resetting the neural pathways in the brain so they can focus better. And what we found with ADHD kids is that their frontal lobes is so hyperactive. It's so crazy up there. And so most of the time what I'm doing is just calming those down. And then it's called feedback. So I'm telling the brain, yes, we want you to go down and we want you to stay there. And then we reward the brain. And then it likes it and it stays there. And like I said, once we do it, it's permanent, which is amazing.
That's fantastic. Dr. Weaver, if someone listening wants to take the next step and explore working with you and becoming a patient in your practice, what do they need to do now?
Well, we love to educate patients. So the first step is actually come to one of our educational pieces. We have them on webinar, and we also have them in-house if you're local. We actually have you come, and we tell you everything that we do in the office to see if we are a good fit for you. And if we are, then you just contact us, and you can come to one of those pieces, that educational pieces that we do. And again, if it's a good fit, you fill out what we call an application, which is different symptoms, and tell me all about what's going on with your health. And if I believe I can help you, I contact you, and then we get started on an action plan.
Well, Dr. Corinne Weaver, thank you so much for being here. I learned a ton. I know everyone listening and watching did too. Thank you again.
Oh, yeah. I love talking about this. This is something I'm very, very passionate about, and I thank you so much for having me on your show.
It absolutely shows. Thank you again. And everyone listening, we hope you enjoyed this program where Dr. Corinne Weaver talked about 3 big myths about ADD and ADHD. If you or a loved one, maybe a child or someone that you know has ADD, ADHD, autism, learning disabilities, and are looking for help, please take the next step. Contact Dr. Weaver at the website and phone number you see on your screen and see if it's a fit to get help and solutions to these items that you may be having a little bit of a problem with, a little struggle with. Thank you again for joining us, and we wish you health and success.